what would be like a practical strategy to start restoring the middle class? I feel like a lot of candidates always talk about restoring the middle class, but for people out there listening that struggle to buy a home, it's like if you're in Nashville and you're trying to buy a single family home, you're looking at several $100,000,
Yeah.
and it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to buy a home these days. So what is like a what is like
ducks
a,
in the bus right now?
We got some ducks out there.
Sherman, is that you back there?
That was me.
That was you?
Ducks are gone now.
Yeah.
Good. All right. No longer in season. That's all right.
What
That's
would
good.
be like a practical strategy that's understood by people listening to this?
I mean, well, we should pass a law that makes it illegal for these big investment firms to buy thousands of houses. That's what's happening. I mean, we all know people who've gone into escrow on a house, or they put down money, and and the housing prices are climbing. So 2 years ago, the average home in this country cost $215,000. Now it's over $400,000, and you're paying 7 or 8% interest, up from 3%. And nobody, I have 7 kids. They're all went to the best schools. My son Bobby is 40. He does have a house. He in Amaryllis. My 6 younger kids went to the best schools in our country. They have great jobs, and none of them can afford a home. So if they can't afford a home, there's nobody who can afford a home.
Mm-hmm.
And that generation is going to be the first generation in American history that is far worse off than their parents' generation, and they're not going to have a home. And home ownership is the core of the American experience. When I was a kid, we had, and my uncle was president, we were the wealthiest country. We owned half the wealth on the face of the earth in America. The American middle class was the greatest economic engine in the history of mankind. One of the reasons for that was because the industrial base of Europe got obliterated during World War II, but our factories were still cooking, and we were cranking out cars and television sets and all the things nobody else could build yet. We had no competition, but also, more importantly, we passed these extraordinary laws that said if you serve in the military, you got to own a home. You got the GI Bill, and you're going to get into a home. And the home at that point cost about $7,000, and the average income was about almost $6,000. So homes were very, very affordable. And once you own a home, everything changes, because now you care about your community, you care about your schools, you care about your police, you care about your transportation, you care about the health care, what the hospital looks like. You become part of an investment in your community, and you care about the appearance of your home and what your neighbor's home, and you're invested in it. But more importantly, you now have equity, which means you can borrow money. And if you can borrow money, then you can pursue your entrepreneurial impulses. And this is something nobody else in the world could do, have that widespread home ownership that allowed this ferment of entrepreneurial activity in our country where, if you can borrow money, I get a second mortgage on your home, you can build a yoga studio or a saloon or a bowling alley or a sporting goods store. And we started building communities based on that, on the capacity to borrow money. Well, now we've got a generation that cannot borrow money because they have no equity. And they are going to be on the sidelines of American capitalism. And we're going from an ownership society to a renter society. And when you do that, you go from being citizens to being subjects. That is that's the colonial system. It's the European aristocratic system that we fought a revolution to get, where the rich people owned all the land and they owned all the productivity, and your only choice was to work for them in one way or another. You rented your house from them, and we're going back to that now. And that we got to reverse that. And one of the ways to do it is to end the tax breaks that make it profitable for BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, Fidelity, Blackstone to buy all of our land, buy our houses. Every one of us knows somebody who went into escrow on a home, was about to sign a contract, and somebody comes in at the last minute with a cash offer 20% higher than the asking price, and takes it off the table, and you're saying, who just stole my home?
Yeah.
And you go, and it's an LLC with an ambiguous name.
In Tennessee, we call that California. We say everyone in California's coming in
Yeah,
here,
I mean,
taking
that
our
happened.
houses.
That
and
was
stuff.
happening.
Yeah. And they're all moving it from out west to here.
Yeah.
Well, that is true in Nashville too. Sometimes it's human beings that are
Yeah.
taking them, but a lot of times it's all over the country. It's an LLC with this ambiguous name, and you follow the lines, you pull the strings, and it leads you back to BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard and these giant financial houses. And so our kids are now competing for the price of money against these behemoth corporations that even if you had the greatest credit rating in the world, BlackRock is paying 30% less than you for money. So of course they can afford that home when you can't, and then they'll rent it back to you, but they own it. And that is, what's happening, and we have to make it so they can't do that anymore. Yeah. That's number one. I mean, number two, we have to stop printing money because that is what's driving inflation. And that is a tax on the poor. It's a tax on middle class. It's a tax on working people, and it's theft. And the reason we have it is to fund the wars. So we're addicted to wars. And the Ukraine war is just the latest example of a war we should have never got into. And that we're spending. We're spent $200 billion on that war. We're going to spend another $500 billion to rebuild Ukraine afterward. And we don't have the money to rebuild Lahaina and Maui. I was out there where they burned this incredible jewel of a city, in this historical city in Maui, and President Biden never visited there. Nobody has ever visited there, and they can't get. They were talking about passing a resolution renaming Lahaina to Kiev because they saw all the money going over to Ukraine, but we don't have the money to build an American community that is decimated. Our kids can't get into. We're in a crisis right now, and we don't have. We're like an alcoholic who's behind on his mortgage payments, and he's in the bar using the milk money to buy rounds for strangers. And that is the situation we're in right now.
With all, did you have something?
I was gonna say simple brain.
Go ahead.
Say we stop printing money. Say you pass this law to where the corporations stop buying the housing. Like, what does that domino effect look like?
Well, my simple brain thinks to that question, things get worse before they get better, right? Like it's darkest before the dawn. You stop printing money, you're going to hit a recession pretty quick because now there's no more money and we're slowly rebuilding. But
here's what you do. You cannot just you can't cut your way out of this debt. We have a $34 trillion debt now. The cost of servicing that debt, so the money we're paying on the interest, is now larger than our defense budget. Within 5 years, 50 cents out of every dollar that is collected in taxes is going to go to servicing the debt. Within 10 years, 100%. It's not sustainable. When you have a debt that size, you can't cut your way out of it. What you need to do is cut the things that are not adding to GDP. So the military, if you build a plane or a bomb, then you're sending it somewhere and blowing it up. And it's like digging a hole and then paying somebody to dig the hole and then to fill it up. It adds nothing to the economy.
Yeah.
There's no goods or services that are accruing to benefit quality of life in our country from building bombs and sending them abroad. Every $1 million we spend on the military creates 2 jobs in America. If you spent that same $1 million on childcare, it creates 18 jobs. So that's what you have to do. And then that allows the mother to go, if she chooses, and I think we should honor motherhood, but the mother, if she chooses, should be able to leave the home and get a job and pay taxes and create wealth. And you grow the economy out of the deficit. You got to cut spending, some. You also have to reinvest the money that is misdirected into. And by the way, we're spending twice now what we were at the height of the Cold War in real dollars. So, and that money is not about national defense. It's about global domination. What I would do is what my grandfather wanted, what my Uncle Jack Kennedy did, which is to create Fortress America, arm ourselves to the teeth at home, make ourselves too expensive to conquer, have enough military power to protect the sea lanes, to protect neutral areas like the Antarctic, and to protect and then to fight two small confrontations in different theaters of the world, to punish bad behavior if we need to. But otherwise, and then take that other money and spend it making a lot of people's lives better, rebuilding our industrial base at home, which we don't have anymore. We can't fight a war anymore because we were able to fight World War II because we had these vast factories better than anybody else in the world that were creating automobiles, and we were able to make tanks and airplanes. And today, now, in the last 20 years, we've exported all of our industrial base to China. Oh, China can fight a war right now, and China can beat us in a war because it has an industrial base, and we no longer have one. We can't build tanks and ships and, a ship a day like we were doing during World War II. People aren't even realizing this, how weak our country is because we've allowed our industrial base to be exported, and we need to bring it back here and start rebuilding the American middle class. I don't think it gets worse. I think we start realigning that money, very quickly to things that actually improve people's lives. Like childcare is one of those things. That is one of the quickest ways to start rebuilding the economy. And then changing the rules to make it much easier for kids to get into houses, and buy their own house.